This is Robert Martellacci, the Mindshare Learning Report, Canada's Learning and Technology e-magazine. I'm here at the Mindshare Workspace in Air Mills Town Centre in beautiful Mississauga, Ontario. The center of the universe, as former Mayor Hazel McCallion would say. And I'm honored to have with me this evening Dr. Michael Fox of the University of Mount Allison in Sackville, New Brunswick. Michael is leading a really super cool initiative, Sackville 2020, really envisioning the future for youth in a sustainable way in beautiful Sackville, Nova Scotia. Sorry, Sackville, New Brunswick, right?
New Brunswick.
In Sackville, New Brunswick, which I've had the pleasure of traveling through in during our summer vacation. Thank you for joining me this evening, Michael.
My pleasure, Robert. Thanks for having me come on the show.
Well, congratulations on the initiative. It's so unique. It caught my attention. It's forward thinking. And, you know, I tend to see a lot more innovation happening in smaller centers. Case in point, I was invited down to St. Thomas, Ontario before Christmas to tour the STEAM school, which was a school built in the late 1800s, and the partnership with the Thames Valley School Board and the local town of St. Thomas. They were going through a bit of an economic challenge, but they teamed up and they made this building function, and it had a maker space on the main floor. The second floor was a school within a school, and then they had a co-working space on the upper level. And I just thought, wow, you know, you don't see that kind of innovation and collaboration happening in the bigger centers, and I think necessity sometimes is the mother of invention.
Exactly. I mean, that is really what drove us to look at perhaps a bit of a different model here. Small town, we have 5,000 people, give or take, on the very edge of New Brunswick. You're right, we're almost in Nova Scotia. We're just 8 kilometers from Nova Scotia. Big school districts in New Brunswick. Everything seems to flow to and from Fredericton. 80-year-old school, 50-year-old school, 40-year-old schools, separate parts of the town, and yet one of Canada's leading universities, Mount Allison, right here in the center of town, and just that opportunity to look at some new 21st century learning spaces and seeing the changes right from K to 20, basically, that you're also seeing in the larger centers. But absolutely. You're right, necessity, our community, former shipbuilding, former foundry town. The university now is really the single largest employer, 700 jobs. We're basically a single industry town, if you can call education an industry, and what a great and powerful industry it is. So absolutely. Education is really the central economic function, as well as the social value of having education so prominently featured in our community. So yeah, we got to work about 2015 on looking at this vision, putting it forward.
And I caught the video on the Sackville 2020 website, which perhaps you can share the URL for other towns and cities that might be interested in pursuing a similar path.
That's great. Yes, that was done by a former Mount Allison student, former high school and middle school student here, and my current daughter, who is just finished her master's at York University in a community you're familiar with. So she did this as her capstone project. So it was actually practicing what we preached, and she spent almost a full year putting that together, interactive web documentary, which really tells the story and the vision. So I'll definitely give you that URL.
Absolutely, and perhaps, and I saw the state of the schools that they're in, and they are quite decrepit, and there are some of those challenges and backlogs in renovations in the inner city schools in the GTA, and you're being proactive. You are bringing the community together, and where are you at in the project?
Well, we've really had some great sort of meeting of the minds over the last 2.5 years. We were prompted to do this really sitting around a dining room table where the community just down the road, Dorchester, New Brunswick, the school district had done a feasibility study on it and had decided to close it, and the community wasn't having it. They simply didn't. But they were in a terrible position then to sort of an uphill battle to reverse that decision, which ultimately that decision was changed. The school is still open, but we didn't want to wait because we just thought, well, we'll be the next community. We've got these older schools; they'll look at them, and we really wanted to focus on the community. As a place where education would be the center social economic development point, not separate silos that in so many places education is sort of the purview of the province. So the mayor and council had just been elected. We had a new premier, Brian Gallant,
Yes.
came into office, and he wanted to focus on education. So we saw this alignment of the stars, so to speak, at the municipal, provincial, and our federal member of parliament is Dominic LeBlanc, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, and
Fantastic.
he's a great friend of education. He knows the community well. So we saw the sort of opportunity to at least talk to decision makers about changing the way we make schools. Schools in New Brunswick are built by the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and they follow a very dated model. So you've got school 21st century learning emerging, experiential learning going on, maker spaces, and yet our school building model is back with the engineers back in the Department of Transportation, the more of the cookie cutter format. So we didn't want to even see our schools go down that road. So we partnered with representatives from across the community, business, school principals, teachers, but also parents and people at Mount Allison, faculty members, the administration, to say, can't we have a shared learning space and call it the community? And so we really started putting this idea, not just the buildings and maybe bringing the buildings closer to the center of town, but also the kind of education we want so students can really thrive in the community.
Fantastic. And I like to say it takes a digital village to raise a child in the 21st century.
That's
And,
right.
and I'm impressed by the visioning around anticipating what the needs and the challenges students are going to face in the future. As you know, I'm part of C21 Canada and one of the co-founders, and the 7Cs are close to my heart, and we want to make sure that every student in Canada is future ready and has that ability to adapt to a changing digital world with those essential skills.
That's right, and that was a real motivator. One of the early leaders within the C21 movement, David Roberts, gave freely of his time. He's from New Brunswick. He lives in New Brunswick. Former deputy minister, came and spent full days with us, talking about what the community was looking for, and of course that matches beautifully with the 7Cs that has come out, and so that's really helped us develop with our school leaders, our educators, what kind of schools we want, and the form of those schools will come after we know where we want to be in the 21st century. I mean, we're already 18 years into the century, and we're still talking about moving into the 21st century. So we've really got some great people thinking about this, and I think going back to your point about where we are, we've had tremendous support from all levels, our mayor and council. So it's within the town's strategic plan now that Sackville Schools 2020 is where the town needs to be focusing its economic and social development skills, which means we need digital community services, getting our schools on a very thick wired network, which our assistant deputy minister has now brought to our community, making the university integrated with that. So having those decision makers and moving this so it's literally on the premier's desk as we speak as a proposal.
Well, that's really exciting, and I'm really passionate about the whole concept of schools of the future, and that was a theme of our redefining schools of the future for today's student was the theme of our Canadian EdTech Leadership Summit last year. And this year we're going to infuse the thinking around sustainability and building a model that promotes sustainability and equity. And I'm thinking we need to have you come down and speak at this conference. I think it would be hugely valuable given the work that you've done with your team, Sackville 2020, to really illuminate the grassroots community integrated approach that you're taking, because it doesn't happen in isolation, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. That's what I'm so proud of, is that community members from all walks of life really have educated themselves, have gone out. What do we mean about a 21st century school? What are the sustainable ways in which we can develop our community, instead of having 3 or 4 separate schools with gymnasiums and cafeterias, right, and wanting a theater but not getting one, and a town that doesn't have a youth center or a central gathering place or a theater to call its own, and then a university that has a 3,000 seat theater and an indoor swimming pool and an athletics field that needs to be part of the community. This is where the sustainability really is promising.
Well, that's really exciting. Well, kudos to you. So what's next?
What's next is that we truly hope that the Premier, now we're moving into pre-election season here in New Brunswick, so next October we have a provincial election. The Premier, I'll give them full credit, the government has been very much an education government. Education budgets have gone up consistently over their time in office. Premier Gallant wants to be the education Premier. We have seen the introduction of a new 10-year education plan in the province, and all that we have designed with this 21st century school fits that 10-year education plan. So the Minister of Education, Brian Kenny, has basically recommended it to the Premier. They're just into their new budget now and estimates. We would love to see a build, design, community-based strategy come forward over the summer, and then move into the fall and hopefully have some building start in the fall. Really, our goal was to have the doors open in 2020, so we need these next 2 years.
That's critical. Well, kudos to you for
Thank you.
Your passion and being the catalyst of this super exciting initiative. We definitely would like to have you in Toronto in October to perhaps update us with some more good news. Fingers crossed. So with that, Michael,
definitely.
I thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks so much, Robert.
That was Michael Fox, Dr. Michael Fox of the University of Mount Allston in Sackville, New Brunswick, who is leading the charge for Sackville 2020 to transform not only learning but the community in the 21st century. And my name is Robert Martellacci of the Mindshare Learning Report, and until next time, keep the learning curve steep.